Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation from renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a rating, and a follow on Apple Podcasts and, well, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are everywhere. That way, we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about animation. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And today, we got a pretty fun show. We've got reviews for Chickenhare and the Hamster of Darkness, Lightyear, and Dead End Paranormal Park. But first, we've got some trailers to discuss, and boy, we have a handful.
So first off, let's talk about the new trailer for the upcoming Kung Fu Panda The Dragon Knight series that is coming to Netflix. It's notable for being, yet another installment of the Kung Fu Panda franchise. It's also noteworthy because it brings back Jack Black as Po, which wasn't a thing even with like the Amazon series. And, Amazon's not shy about spending oodles of money. And in terms of DreamWorks TV animation, it looks better. There's always this kind of disappointing downgrade when you go from like a really good looking DreamWorks movie to TV. And that's not all on them. It's pretty much like they're outsourcing the CGI animation for the most part. But here, it looks like there was a little more time to putting some shading, some visual effects to add it on to the CGI. It doesn't look as wooden or as clunky as most going from movie to TV DreamWorks properties go.
It's not as jarring of a difference between, say, How to Train Your Dragon 2 and, as much as I love this show, Race to the Edge. There is a clear difference in quality.
And that's just the thing, TV shows have a different production cycle than movies. And if we really wanted every episode to look like the movie, we'd probably bankrupt DreamWorks in that regards.
Very true.
It's also interesting that this isn't going to Hulu or Peacock. I guess the Netflix DreamWorks collaboration is fruitful and healthy enough to keep this up. It's just interesting because I would feel like Universal would want all of their DreamWorks stuff on one service to make that service look more appealing. But I guess it works out enough for Peacock to be what it is and not have to worry too much about content and such. But, the show looks good. I'm curious about how it will unfold. My pedantic fan nerdy side is like, so where does this fit into the continuity of it all?
I was about to ask the same thing. Like, is this like a midquel? Is this like just before 3? I'm sure, like Race to the Edge, they put it in a spot in like the movie timeline where it doesn't necessarily affect
the continuity.
Yeah, tucked away just enough so like you can just enjoy it as a standalone thing.
But it's also funny, like, oh, look at all these different characters and entities and mystical weapons of power and villains. Where are they? No mention. But, I'm looking forward to it. The Kung Fu Panda stuff is usually some of the better DreamWorks spinoff work. But we'll have to see how it goes. It's coming out next month. Speaking of DreamWorks, we got another trailer, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, because this past week the Annecy Film Festival was happening. Sadly, we will not be talking about it because they didn't do an online or virtual version. Real bloody shame that the entire film festival circuit is kind of regressing backwards to in-person events only.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
But this new trailer is a lot of fun, shows us a little more of the visual art style of it all, just the whole painted Spider-Verse look, which, I know a lot of people are saying like, well, now every movie's cribbing from Spider-Verse. And it's like, hi, I'm an animation fan. I don't care. We are finally in a new wave of distinct and unique looking animated films.
Anytime like someone tries to say, oh, they're just cribbing from Spider-Verse, I just think of the gif of Donald Glover saying, good.
And they show us a little more of the story and the new little therapy dog side character, and it all looks a lot of fun. I'm curious to know which of these jokes will show up in the movie or if they actually do. Because, we've seen animated trailers that have jokes that are there to appeal to the kids, but then are never actually in the movie.
Or at least just work better in context.
Right. But, not much else to say. It looks great. It's now sadly moved to December 21st. I'm curious to see if that helped or anything, or like how far production is with this film. I did love seeing the three bears a little more. That was a fun little detail. And I liked some of the humor, like when Puss in Boots is trying to show off who he is to the dog, and he doesn't have his sword, and the dog's kind of like, oh, all right, okay. Like a little unsure about Puss in Boots as a whole, as a character and such. If this is what DreamWorks wants to do with some of their sequels, where they just go all out, I'm down for it. Like, some of these shots are amazing in this trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see this on a big screen.
Same. So between this and The Bad Guys, this is like a great, like, kind of next step forward for DreamWorks. Genuinely blown away by how great this movie looks. And we've already talked, like, last year when we did our Shrek retrospective, how much I enjoyed the first Puss in Boots. So I know for a fact I'm going to enjoy this one a lot too.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this film does, because if that threatening image of a Shrek 5 happens, and the fact, Mike Myers has said he would love to return as a character, and that one weird little cameo from Mike Myers' limited series on Netflix, we'll have to see what happens. Next up, we finally got a release date for the US for Dragon Ball Superhero. And before we talk about how redundant that title is again, Mike, what did you find out?
So you know how Akira Toriyama is very forgetful? So when he was coming up with the title for Dragon Ball Superhero, he literally forgot that the show was called Dragon Ball Super. It's a very minor note because, in my opinion, what's in a name? But still, it's just kind of funny that Toriyama is going to Toriyama.
Yeah. It fits in perfectly. I mean, come on. Characters are named after vegetables or pieces of clothes. It makes sense for it to be called Superhero, even if it is more like a whoops. And they're trying to play it off like, oh, yeah, no, that was intentional. Like side-eyeing everyone, saying like, please fall for it. Please fall for it. I still think this looks pretty good. I know some people are bummed about the lower frame rate and movements of the characters, but this is really no different than what Studio Orange would do, which, by the way, they're going to be rebooting Trigun with Studio Orange, and that just sounds amazing.
Oh, I am very much looking forward to that.
Anyway, I don't have much else to add about Dragon Ball Super. The action looks good. The characters are going to be interesting to see how they fit into the story. I am a little surprised to see them bring back the Red Ribbon Army, because we haven't seen them in like decades.
Yeah.
Pretty much the villains of the first Dragon Ball series. And then they kind of came up and about every so often. But then it's just kind of like, okay, maybe let's not use them because of their kind of origin of like what they represent within the Dragon Ball universe.
Yeah, it is weird to see them showing up again as the villain. But what I'm at least liking about the dub is that one of the two Gammas is voiced by Zeno Robinson, who has admitted on Twitter how much of a big Dragon Ball fan he is. So for that reason alone, I'm just happy to see him involved. This whole cast is pretty much a mix of old school Funimation voice actors and like sort of the new school that's popped up in like the last 5 to 10 years.
Was anybody else shocked that Charles Martinet, the voice of Mario, is going to be in this?
Yeah, I only just found out that recently, and
that's very interesting. I think I identified which character he's going to play. So it was amazing, because when most anime dub companies do dub work for anime, they don't really go for anyone outside of the anime voice work community. Like, you're going to see the ones who pop up all over the place in anime. And yet here we are, Charles Martinet the voice of everyone's favorite video game icon, coming out and saying like, hey, I'm going to be part of this movie. And it's like, what? I also like that Gohan and Piccolo are going to be more of an important piece to the overall story.
They are honestly like the main characters of this story, which is, as a fan of these characters, particularly Gohan, this is very important. And I'm just really excited for what that means for him moving forward.
Yeah, because Gohan is a weird little tragedy of Dragon Ball history and franchise woes, because he was going to be like the next big hero next to Goku and such. Goku dies after trying to defeat Cell. Gohan defeats Cell. And then Gohan kind of gets nerfed from the story a little. Like, oh, I'm not interested in fighting after this certain period of time. And it's just like, really? Oh, okay, I guess.
Here's the problem with the way Gohan's been written. It's okay for him to not be as like excited about fighting the way that his dad is. The problem is in the execution of his character. Toriyama and the other writers at Toei, they just don't know what to do with him. And that's been very apparent in a lot of Dragon Ball Super, where he's really been pushed to the side.
It's a shame, but we'll have to see how much this changes and pushes the story forward. I hope it's good. I know it's kind of a bummer that we have to wait basically 2 months for US audiences to get it, but you know, it's going to be thrilling, and it's going to come out during a very dead part of the year for movies. So it has all the chances in the world to make a bunch of money.
It's going to make a lot of money.
And I hope a lot of that money also goes back into the voice actors and the people who work hard on translating and recording these films.
Oh, absolutely. I hope that.
Yeah, and not just the CEOs of Crunchyroll. Next up, we are also going to talk about Disney's new film. We didn't talk about this last time because it was, we were wanting to focus on Netflix's Netflix Geek Week. They released a new trailer for Strange World, their upcoming animated feature, which will have its first open gay lead character. I know when Disney announces this stuff, you kind of have to look with a side eye a little and be like, okay, Disney, here we go again. But it seems like there's a little more excitement for this one character since he's going to be up front and center. And they also announced like a bunch of actors involved with it, including like Jake Gyllenhaal, which, yeah, I'm kind of happy and surprised to see Jake Gyllenhaal get into another voice acting thing. Because, the last time we talked about him, he was in, what was it? The Spirit Untamed film.
Oh, yeah, he was in that.
Yeah, he was. And then also like Lucy Liu and such. And I think Dennis Quaid. And, well, the movie looks a lot of fun. Kind of a return to form of their pseudo action adventures films that they tried to do within the early 2000s and backfired horribly for them, at least financially. I know a lot of people love Atlantis and
Treasure Planet
now, but these films were catastrophic failures for the company. And I'm curious to see how they will handle this again, because I know we had Raya and the Last Dragon, which was definitely had more of a comedic edge and its action, and it didn't fully work for everyone. So I'm wondering how this will work here. I think it looks good. I love this whimsical atmospheric look of the world that they're traversing, and the character designs look great. Do you have any thoughts?
Seeing this trailer on the big screen in front of Lightyear, which we'll talk about in a minute, was awesome. I love that the trailer, it's a callback to all of those 50s pulp sci-fi films. This honestly just looks a whole lot of fun. The world is very goopy, definitely lives up to the title Strange World. The character who is the first gay protagonist on the big screen, his name is Ethan Clade, and he's voiced by Jabuki Young White. Looking forward to seeing how these characters, kind of interact with this weird and wonderful planet.
Now we're going to move back to Netflix quickly because they released a trailer for their upcoming Super Giant Robot Brothers show, which got a lot of notoriety because it was being animated in Unreal Engine, and the animation was co-produced by motion capture. They put out, I think a few months ago, a very detailed behind the scenes making of video of like the animation process of what they were doing. Well, first off, the art style for this show looks really heckin' charming. Love the two different robot designs. Like one has more of like a slick Gundam look. The other has more of like that old 60s super robot look, which I'm sure is like the point and such. It just looks good. It looks like it will be hugely entertaining. And I'm just glad that this was far enough in production so that Netflix didn't just, pull the trigger on it while, using all that money that they supposedly saved to put on a real life Squid Game.
Oh, Netflix, gonna Netflix.
But anyway, Super Giant Robot Brothers looks really fantastic. And I can't wait to watch it in August.
Same. This trailer just kind of exploded with that sort of crazy like anime energy, but with like sort of with Western sensibilities. The best way I could describe it is like a marriage between Into the Spider-Verse and Megas XLR.
Yeah. And now our final trailer we're going to talk about, and we're going to connect this with the whole Annecy Film Festival. The big winner of the festival was a film called Little Nicholas. They had a work in progress conference for this last year when they were kind enough to let the festival do a virtual version. And now we have an official trailer for it that came out in May. And once again, it just looks heckin' charming. Just super adorable. Love the painted watercolor look. It reminds me a lot of Ernest and Celestine and the Big Bad Fox and Other Tales. I know it's based off of like a popular comic series.
It does have that sort of comic strip aesthetic.
It kind of reminds me of like a more charming, like a French take on Charlie Brown in some regards, or maybe like a less obnoxious Dennis the Menace kind of thing. But it's hard to describe. And the film looks like it's a mixture of both the comics and then this through line plot of the creators crafting Little Nicholas.
I always love when stories kind of weave in between the making of a story and then the story within that story.
I know G Kids is really into bringing over the Japanese animation right now. Like I know they're going to bring over like Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, and they just announced that they're going to theatrically release and put on home video the final Evangelion Rebuild film. Makes me wonder if they're going to get the other three at one point.
I'm sure they will eventually.
Right. But I want them to bring over some of these French productions or European productions. Like the Annecy Film Festival is supposed to be about this world of animation. And there are so many films that were at the festival that looked like they'd be right up their alley. I know they got that Goodbye Don Glees film. And I know but 11 Arts got the other Japanese animated film that was in production. But I want to see something else. I want to see them bring over like the Onkadamian film that, she was the one who did Morona's Fantastic Tale.
I love that movie. G-Kids should bring over more films from like Europe or just anywhere in addition to their current anime slate.
Yeah, and I get it. Anime is making so much money at the box office right now in the US. Big at the box office to them. But bring over the ones from Europe. And I'm sure there are some talks right now going on about distribution deals and such for Little Nicholas and other films. But we'll have to see. Hopefully some of these are playing at Animation as Film this year. So we'll have to wait and see. But now we are done with trailer reactions. At least for now. We'll see what this next week brings us. Mike, where should we start first?
Let's start with the latest film from N-Wave Pictures. This is Chickenhare and the Hamster of Darkness, directed by Ben Stassen and Benjamin Musquet, from a screenplay written by Dave Collard and based on the graphic novel Chickenhare by Chris Grine. So we follow young Chickenhare, the adopted son of King Peter, a famous adventurer, part chicken and part hare. He has a really tough time growing up and disguises himself as a hare to avoid the mockeries of his peers. When the day of the Royal Adventurers Society trials comes, Chickenhare, hampered by his disguise, fails miserably. But he is determined to grab a second chance and find the scepter of the Hamster of Darkness before his evil uncle Lapin. The scepter will give immense power to its holder, but if Lapin gets a hold of it, he will be unstoppable. accompanied by his faithful servant Abe, a sarcastic turtle, and Meg, a martial arts expert skunk, he sets off on an epic and initiatory quest. This is the best film from N-Wave. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, so N-Wave Pictures are the same studio that did like The Son of Bigfoot and the Bigfoot family films. They also did The Wildlife. That was back in 2016. And it's definitely their best film. Yeah, I mean, I know to some people and more snobby animation heads, that might not mean a whole lot considering what the competition is like out there. But I am very happy to see them improving upon their storytelling, their animation, and the fact that they are doing more with like committing to an actual story, and their animation actually looks pretty decent for the small budget and time that they had.
What is the budget for this one?
Let's see here.
I'm seeing 20 million euros.
So not big, like smaller side of the double digits. Something to remember about a lot of these films that you see, like when Lionsgate brings them over or something, they will probably not have the same time, talent, and budget to, you know, match what we're doing in the States or in other parts of the world. Because, you know, Disney is spending like $200 million on most of their animated films, and it shows. And they also have like hundreds of people working on them. Not to say that they don't have hundreds of people working on these films, but
it would be more like, and I'm only guessing here, 100 versus 200.
It's that kind of thing. It's like smaller teams, smaller budgets, smaller production windows, at least for what we can assume. That's why that Pinocchio film from Lionsgate looks so rough. They probably didn't have the time and money to do anything. That's why Pinocchio runs, walks, and moves around like every other human instead of being made of wood. Like they weren't given the time to really like make his movements distinct because of him being a wooden puppet and what have you. At least with here, it seems like they knew like what they had on their hands and the production of it all. And putting all of that into consideration, I do think this is a very solid movie. I'm not going to be shocked if someone doesn't care for it. Netflix was not really willing to give us contact information to get screeners for this film. So it seems kind of a bummer that people were not able to watch this early just to be like, hey, here's our reviews on whether you want to watch it or not. Like, even if I don't like a movie like from N-Wave, I still want to talk about it in a way that like, hey, maybe if any of this sounds interesting, you'll watch it. You'll come up with your own opinion.
For example, one thing I genuinely enjoyed about this was that it is a coming of age story for our protagonist. Like, this has a really good message of accepting who you are, what makes you you. For someone who's like just getting into animation or just storytelling in general, that's a really good message to kind of wrap your film around.
Yeah, it's a really solid action adventure film. It definitely takes a lot of cues and references from Indiana Jones.
I noticed that like immediately.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, every film has taken notes from Indiana Jones. Even Indiana Jones is based off of those old adventure films from back in the day. So it's not like Indiana Jones was like the gold standard for action adventure films. And just like its inspirations and references and homages or what have you were like the gold standard for back then. So in short, nothing is original. Everyone's going to just try their take on something that you familiar. So for the small budget that they had, I think the film looks good. The textures look pretty fine. They had enough to actually do some shading and pretty solid textures for like the fur effects, the sand, the ice, the water. Like it looks nice for what it is.
I think the details, like the textures, are well done. For me, it's just the character designs. I feel I only say this because right after I watched the movie, I looked at like artwork from the graphic novel. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing that they went with a more familiar and pseudo generic look with the CGI. Like you've seen these like Disney adjacent looking designs for everything. And it's a bummer, like, because, you know, we're now at that point in time where like the bad guys in Into the Spider-Verse can show you that you can actually make your art look exactly like the concept art. Instead of looking at an art book and be like, man, I like this artwork more than the actual visuals of the movie. You can do that now. But again, they probably didn't have the time or the budget to make it work. So they just went with the most like approachable way they could make it work. And it's not like they don't do anything creative with like the visuals. I think the encounter with the pygmies is a highlight in terms of that kind of situation.
That was a nice creative sequence.
I don't know how tasteful it is, but I liked the creativity with the pygmies and like how they were kind of like these little building block looking characters.
They were like Legos.
Yeah, pretty much. They do a lot of cool stuff with them, like their stacking and such, and the little pig like tail aspects are very cool. It's just a shame that like the designs overall look so generic. It's fine, but I wish they had a little more like that with the like what they did with the pygmies, and they used that elsewhere. But I understand if there was like, it's a really solid like beginner's adventure film. Like they get stuck in quicksand. They have to go through challenges through the last place where the Hamster of Darkness is. And the solution to the puzzles there are pretty creative. The overall movie is about like the journey of Chickenhare becoming more comfortable with who he is. Like at first, like he's ashamed of his more chicken side like of himself with the feet,
feathers, and
he hides it all like under these fake rabbit feet and like all this Indiana Jones attire. But as he goes along, he starts shedding that away. It's like, I don't need these fake feet. I don't need this jacket. I don't need this hat. It's just holding me back from who I really am. And I'm probably overthinking this a little. I could see a lot of LGBTQA plus people taking a lot from this kind of arc, because it's not just you could see it as a be yourself, be true to who you are kind of story, but it was interesting as I was rewatching the film and seeing that kind of like interpretation of Chickenhare's art.
The delivery of the dialogue is just vague enough that you could insert yourself into this narrative. That's why I think it's a good message, because it can apply to anyone.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation enough. I think that's smart if that was the case. And who knows, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that was intentional. Or sometimes they're like, well, that wasn't really the point, but you know, that's cool that people were like took it that way.
At the end of the day, like once a movie is released to the public, it kind of belongs to them.
Yeah, like it's their work of art, but the public response to it is the public's response. I just think that's kind of neat. And I think that's why I like this film a lot more than like Son of Bigfoot or The Wildlife, where The Wildlife just felt like a very interesting tech demo of like, here's what we can do with a very mediocre plot. And then Son of Bigfoot was just like, okay, we're going to try to make a story work out of this, but our animation is going to look pretty decent. And it is. And now Chickenhare is just kind of like them blooming into who they are as a studio and the people that work there. That's nice. I wish the side characters were a little more interesting, like the skunk girl. I wish we could go past the point of a skunk's only defining trait being the smell. I just don't like that gag anymore. And that's probably me being a snob. I get why they do it. It's an easy way to get a laugh here and there. But I am ready for them to move past that or not make that such a focus.
Same.
I get it though, in a way though. It helps thematically with her trying to like her backstory of the whole I was not loved for who I was, so I felt ashamed of myself. But then now I'm more comfortable with who I am. And that works. It's just, you know, it's a shame that it also has to be connected to a fart gag.
Yeah, I like the character quite a bit. She also didn't need to be a skunk. She could have been any other character, and it would still mostly get the point across.
I was pretty okay with the turtle side character. He had a few decent lines. This film is very pro-union, which was kind of amusing, and I love. Wait, you're not coming down with me? Hey, the union says I don't have to. Power in numbers.
That might be the funniest line in the whole movie.
Yeah, very much. And I love that whole prison sequence has probably the best jokes. Like the one character is like, why is he in here? And it's like, I murdered someone. Nah, tax evasion. I killed the tax code. Or it's just like, yeah, and this person had to go to the hospital and almost died. It was just a flu, but I think he got it from our villain. The turtle is okay, like not my favorite sarcastic character. Kind of a weird last second twist of him apparently being born without a shell.
That came off a little bit weird, but really they only did that to execute
like part of the plot.
Yeah, or just like that one action sequence of sliding down the hill.
I was kind of okay with everyone else. Like they had their kind of typical bully characters who kind of redeemed themselves at the end. The dad is kind of the typical animated dad. The villain is fine. A very typical power hungry villain who just wants the power of the Hamster of Darkness to rule the world and become king. At least he likes to eat up the scenery and has a few decent lines here and there. It was kind of interesting with the whole like gorilla henchman and just how he was there for like 5 minutes and then out of the movie entirely. It's like, just go back to your wife and leave me be. And it's like, okay. I kind of get why they did that, but it's also like, kind of a weird story beat.
You bring in like what could be an interesting character for like 5 minutes and then just dispose of him.
I know like none of these voice actors I'm about to reference are actually in this movie, but the voice cast that they got, like I had to make sure that some of these characters weren't like the actor who plays Finn in Adventure Time, or like the villain wasn't voiced by Jim Cummings. British evil voice. It was kind of interesting because the voice cast includes like Jordan Tartakow, Joey Lotsko, Layla Berzins, Brad Venable, and Chris McCune, Danny Betzenfeld, Joseph Kamen, Dino Andrade, Cedric Williams. But they did a pretty solid job with a lot of their voice work here. It's like, it's a good cast.
This is a fine voice cast. I think it's kind of funny, though, that Joey Lotsko is probably the most famous out of all of them. He's right now the current voice of Jiminy Cricket.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Dino Andrade is also interesting because he's also, do you know about the Batman Arkham games?
I'm aware of them.
He voices Scarecrow in them. And in Chickenhare, he's that little duck character.
Oh.
So I was kind of amused and kind of thinking about like, man, I wonder if you could take the Scarecrow lines from the Batman Arkham games and put them to this character and to see how funny that would sound.
That would be quite amusing.
Yeah, and there are like a few decent jokes, like when they say like Chickenhare got past this party, he's just like 200 clicks away from us, and a big bowl like henchman are just like what does clicks mean? I always hear that in missions, but I never know what that means. It's like, okay, that's a pretty decent joke. Like there's a lot of effort put into this one. I don't think doesn't feel like, okay, we need to get enough here to be like, yeah, this was a pretty decent time. It's not as forgettable upon release like a lot of smaller animated films that Netflix decides to bring over. Now, do you have any like parts that you liked or like criticisms?
I will say something about the Hamster of Darkness. It seems a little bit too silly for an adventure that's, while this does have like a comedic edge, it's not like, I don't think they go quite far enough with the jokes to support a MacGuffin as silly as the Hamster of Darkness. Everything else, like at least in terms of the adventure, seems a bit too played straight. If this was like,
you want to see them go like full on silly, like that SEAL Team film from last year.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, why call it the Hamster of Darkness and then play it like a very serious adventure film? I agree with that.
This kind of goes back to what we were talking with the Pygmies. That's a really creative idea. That's like just one of like the 3 trials.
It's just like there's nothing super flashy and amazing about this film. Gets the job done. I don't really have much else to say. I like its message. I like some of the humor. It's a good gateway film to introduce young kids to action adventure films, and you could show them Indiana Jones or April and the Extraordinary World and what have you. It's fine. I had a decent time watching it, and I'm going to be supportive of what InWave does next.
Same. And if any of these films happen to land on Netflix, I hope that whoever is in charge of P&A does better to let people know, hey, they exist.
Let's move on to another Netflix thing, and one that is definitely very important to the landscape of animation right now. Let's talk about Dead End Paranormal Park.
I am genuinely excited to talk about this. This is a series based on a graphic novel and I think a short from 2014 called Dead Endia, created by Hamish Steele. And the series follows the story of a group of employees, Barney and Norma, who work at a theme park haunted house during the summer, which might be a portal to hell. Both are joined by Pugsley, Barney's pet dog, and Courtney, a devil who was banished from their home, as they face zombies, game show hosts, witches, crushes, all that stuff. This show is delightful.
I had a really good time with this one. Granted, like, I know some people are going to have issues with the puppet animation that's used for the 2D work here. And maybe there are some points that they could have gone a little darker with the horror aspects. But for a show that's like a horror comedy for kids, it's got a lot going on under the hood of it all. It's a big deal because we have one of the few openly trans characters in animation in general. Like, that's a big deal.
Yep.
And Zach Barrick does a good job bringing this character to life. We also have Cody Kavitha, who voices Norma, a like neurodivergent character who within that first episode was like, oh yeah, that's me in some aspects.
I saw a lot of myself in Norma.
At first it is very much goofy with a slight tinge of dark and creepiness to it. It's not like a Tim Burton kind of looking world, but it's got some fairly spooky aspects of it all. I did get a huge kick out of like the first episode when Courtney, the little devil character voiced by Emily Osment, was like, okay, boss, here are 2 souls that you can choose from. And you see the big hulking demonic force. And then it goes to like doing that eeny, meeny, miny, mo kind of way of choosing a host. Of course, then the dog, Pugsley, who's voiced by Alex Brightman, who fans of Hell of a Boss would recognize Alex Brightman, and that voice is very recognizable.
Also, and this is mostly for PJ Campbell, he's Beetlejuice on Broadway.
Yeah, Alex Brightman is in Hell of a Boss as Fizzaroli, both the robot Fizzaroli and the actual Fizzaroli character. You could easily recognize them, and they also he's also in the musical adaptation of School of Rock as Dewey Finn.
Yep.
At first I was like, it's kind of interesting to see them pull so many musical and Broadway talent for this. And it's like, no, I absolutely get it.
Yeah, by I think it's like the 9th episode, they're like, oh, so this is why we got all these people.
Alex Brightman does a great job as like the voice of both Pugsley's normal talking dog. Well, I guess it's kind of funny to say, oh yeah, just a normal talking pug, and the demonic voice for Temeculus. And it's really fun to see him kind of go in between both voices, like with the more like crunchy voice for the demon and then the more normal casual voice for Pugs. Courtney, like, it was interesting because when I looked up and saw that it was Emily Osment, I was thinking it was like Sarah Silverman. Do you know what I mean? Like that voice, nasally, snarky voice, kind of like of what Silverman's character in Wreck-It Ralph.
She does kind of have like that sort of like snappy personality. It works for this character.
But the show, like, on top of having like these spooky fun things like the old animal mascot characters coming to life. I remember you messaged me with the catch line of the old mascot characters in, I think it was like either episode 2 or 3.
It was episode 2 where these zombie mascots are wandering around the park saying meat.
But they mean like meet and greets, not the food. And I remember you messaged me that and I was just like, everything okay? And then you told me you were like watching the show and I was like, oh yes. But they do a really decent job with having like balance between the scares and the jokes. They do go into a few decent areas, like the 3rd episode, Trust Me, where they have like a workers trust group event. They And it turns out like the trust guru is like a demon who feeds on their fears and whatnot.
His name is Harmony. It's supposed to mean harm many.
I think that's very clever. And like a lot of modern cartoons, they do start to like weave in like a more substantial story under the bright colors and the cartoony designs of everyone.
That's kind of why, honestly, one of the scarier moments in that episode was Norma's nightmare scape, where just real life, but they shift the art style to this like almost like watercolor sort of aesthetic.
I like that part. That was very cool.
That might be some of the best visualization of, it's the best like kind of visualization of how people with autism sort of see the world. I think that'll be really helpful to those who are like going through it and really struggling to, you know,
like confront the world because they find it terrifying when it's just like, and I get that the world is kind of scary outside of your personal bubble, and just like the nervousness of interacting with people. Like this show does a good job with the struggles of our two main characters. They do focus a lot of that on Barney and his disconnect with his family and how the parents are the worst at first. And of course, by the end, they realize their mistakes. I think the show handles everything pretty well. They take a very respectful approach to Barney's arc about how he doesn't feel at home or, you know, with a family at home because of how one member of the family does not respect his new identity of who he is.
It's a very human approach to type of story. It doesn't come off like an after school special. It's handled with finesse in a way that like matters to the main character, but also doesn't really take away from the larger storyline either.
Like the story is meatier than what you would think. There's also the underlying mystery of what happens to Pauline Phoenix's character, who's voiced by Clinton Leop, who plays this. How would you describe Pauline Phoenix? She's not like Elvira. I
think the best way I can describe Pauline is, this is tough because she is just this like generally larger than life kind of persona, almost in the same way that like Miss Piggy is that sort of larger than life icon, or at least she thinks she is.
Right. Because Pauline Phoenix is the drag queen owner of the Phoenix Parks where this whole show takes place. And throughout the 10 episodes that are released for right now, for part 1, they kind of allude that Pauline might not really be Pauline, or at least the person you see as Pauline is not the same one you see in the old films and shows and what have you. It's a very solid mystery as you find out like the connection with all the different park employees, and then just the absolute mystery that's unwrapped within Dead End Paranormal Park of what happened to Pauline. And I don't want to go into too much spoiler territory about what happens, but I did like the twist. It's a better handled twist than we'll talk about Lightyear in a second.
I agree with what I think you're about to say. The twist is like honestly something that I didn't see coming, but also kind of makes sense within this world. This show has a lot to say about theme park culture and the entertainment industry kind of at the same time. And that's why I think some of my friends who are like kind of theme park enthusiasts will really get a kick out of this. Can we take a second to talk about the musical episode? Because damn.
The 9th and 10th episode,
yeah,
are mostly musical adjacent. And I wasn't really expecting a musical, but then you look at the cast and it's like, no, that makes sense.
And then they got Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy to write all of these original songs, and they're all bangers.
Yeah, they're all very good. I know some people can look at the animation and see it as a little underwhelming, but I didn't find a lot of the scares or the action to be handicapped by the movements of all the characters. And I think that comes down to smart storyboarding and planning. And I like that. It might not have the most biggest visual scares or the action and whatnot, but it all works in this really charming art style that I know a lot of people would probably connect to, like with video games on the indie side of things or comics and what have you. But I like the look of the overall show.
It reminds me a lot of like Hilda and some of the other shows on Netflix with like that similar style.
And I like our voice cast. I want to just quickly give a shout out to all the other voice cast members. So like we have like Zach Barrick, Cody Kavitha, Alex Brightman, and Emily Osmond. We talked about them. Clinton Leop as, Pauline Phoenix. Kenny Tran as Barney's love interest. Logan Logs Guyen. And I liked him. I thought he was a very charming love interest for our main character.
Cool.
Catherine Kavari, who voices Badia Hassan, or as she likes to be preferred to be called, Death Slide.
I love that.
I love that. She's like, maybe you should just call people by their names. Okay, Death Slide, you do this. You got it.
So fun fact about her voice actress, she's been voicing Miss Marvel in a lot of the video games over the past few years.
Yeah, she's Kamala Khan. And golly, so many. Mostly the Marvel Rising stuff, which I'm a little shocked we did not talk about that stuff, but we'll have to find time to maybe cover it at one point.
If we can get through, I would love to discuss some of those.
I just really find this whole show charming. I love like the little side monsters and demons and such. That little red slug thing is hilarious. And I love that like you finally hear it talk, and it's basically like old school phone dial-up noise.
Little details like that I love. Also just the fact that their expression is just like a blank face.
It's so adorable, and it's kind of a bummer that he's like a lot of his main gag is just getting kicked around. This is just a really charming show, and I'm really worried about how Netflix might bury this one. And if we'll get like a second part, I mean, who knows? Because, Netflix being Netflix, they're going to do, the Netflix thing of keep us waiting, hope this is a big hit, and then say like, oh, hey, we just happen to have a second season, or, part 2. Which would be more, accurate.
I hope there is like a part 2 already in the can, because you don't end the season on a cliffhanger unless you know what's coming.
Right. Because it was interesting because, they saved the day. Everyone grows as characters. I think they handled a lot of the results of everyone very well. And I'm curious to see with a second part how that continues, because like I like a lot of the little details with even with like the monsters and such, like the night hag and the day hag and such, and like how they were able to connect that with like our character's main arc as people. And then, at the very end, they introduce this one character, this unknown character who maybe represents like, because, we already know that the park is connected to hell. So they're kind of hinting at like, if there is a second part or what Netflix would like to call a second season, is heaven about to come down to the park and such. So, or at least that's what I kind of took away from the design of this one character that showed up.
I'm very much looking forward to more of those characters.
I want to see more of this. And it's such an important show, not just for representation, like on the show, like with its characters, but also it has a very big emphasis on like a LGBTQA plus team of creatives working on the show. And that's really cool when you have people going in front of and behind the animation that are able to tell their stories. Because, I mean, like, listen, I get that some writers want to be able to tell these complex stories about certain topics, but if you're not careful, how to put this lightly, you're going to get raked over the coals if you do something incredibly bad.
Fortunately, with this show, they actually had like the support of Lad, for example, who kind of went through all the scripts. They really did not leave any stones unturned in terms of like respectfully representing the trans community and other LGBTQ members.
And it's just a shame that this show is finally coming out right when Netflix is sending mixed messages about where it stands. Like, they'll throw countless amounts of money at transphobic comedians who are really just solidifying their legacies as transphobic garbage fires, which the director of On Account of Three was like, really? That's what your legacy is? That's what you want it to be? That's really what you want to die on a hill on? Okay. And then they're like, and apparently there were some rumblings of like some of the Netflix presents comedy specials where like the comedians that were very supportive of the LGBT community got those parts of their stand-up moments cut out of their specials.
Ugh, that's not cool.
Yeah, that's not cool at all. Like Netflix, you got to pick a side here. You can't just play by your own rules anymore. You're getting looked at with daggers. You got to do better.
That's always been the problem with Netflix, is that they're too big. They're like the Walmart of streaming services. They want to have everything, which kind of means they focus on nothing.
They want to play both sides and say like, we're for everyone, even though they're one of the few streaming services to have more like experimental and open progressive shows and ideas get made. But they're also like letting a lot of transphobia in and like homophobia into their service. And it's a shame because like maybe if this was on like HBO Max or maybe another streaming service, this show wouldn't have survived playing on TV.
Absolutely not.
Because then it's like standards and practices. And to be clear, we know that they're just doing their job, but some of the archaic rules that standards and practices follow, depending on like what studio that they are working for, they are outdated and just gross. Like this show wouldn't have survived being on Disney Channel and what have you. A lot of this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Netflix. But Netflix is now they're hurting their reputation. Dead End, Paranormal Park, a really rock solid horror comedy series for everyone.
If you love horror, if you love theme parks, if you love musicals, if you love just sort of a critique of like the entertainment industry at large, then you will love the series.
And now let's talk about the first Pixar film to hit theaters
since 2020.
It's really tough to talk about this one, not because it's like, oh, it's got some super deep, controversial, and challenging aspects. It's the optics and it's the real mixed bag of everything. And a lot of people are probably going to expect us to say, oh, it's failing at the box office.
Nope.
It's been out for like literally 3 days at this point. Let's wait a little to see what happens within the second week. And everyone wants to say a film is a hit or dies within the first week. And unless it's like extremely dire, there's no reason to do that.
Agreed.
But yeah, let's talk about Light.
So this movie is directed by Angus MacLane from a screenplay he co-wrote with Jason Headley. Described as the movie that inspired the titular action figure, the film follows the legendary space ranger Buzz Lightyear, who embarks on an intergalactic adventure alongside ambitious recruits Izzy Hawthorne, Mo, Darby, and his robot companion, Socks. I like this movie quite a bit. I can't say it's on the same level as any of the Toy Story movies, but I'm going to put those Toy Story movies on the shelf and just talk about Lightyear as a really well done sci-fi action adventure, kind of reminiscent more of like the action films that Disney put out in the early 2000s, like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet. It doesn't feel quite as a film from the 90s that this movie is trying to be sold as. We can save the pedantic talk for a little bit later.
Actually, I want to get that out of the way first because, listen, I don't think the premise is that confusing. The PR and the marketing have maybe not done the best job with explaining what this movie is. But to me, and like the director's already pretty much confirmed this, it's the in-universe movie that Andy saw as a kid that inspired the Buzz Lightyear toy. And we've seen this throughout all of history with media and pop culture. Like you get the Ghostbusters movie, then you get the toys, and then you get the TV show that pretty much waters down and makes it more family friendly for a wider audience.
Another example of that is Beetlejuice, which is very Tim Burton in live action, but then like the series comes out and it's like, yeah, they're kind of connected, but this has a much different tone. The main character and Lydia are like actual friends. That's like exactly the relationship this movie has with the series Buzz Lightyear Star Command, which, by the way, Disney, please put that on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the holdup for that one is. And I feel like that's not as complicated to understand, but I agree that the PR departments did not do a great job describing it as that. You know how we got like RoboCop, and then someone thought, hey, this RoboCop movie is a big hit. Let's expand the audience, even though you're going to get kind of like weird looks from everyone by saying, so you really want to make a child-friendly RoboCop.
The 80s were a weird time.
Yeah, or like Rambo got one, and it was like, really? Rambo? The one with the first movie is actually like a really somber like action thriller, and then it just went all ballistic and guns and explosions and such for everything else. Really? You want to turn that into a kid's cartoon? Oh, okay, whatever. I don't agree with the premise being confusing. I will agree with the marketing and PR not doing the best job of explaining it. Even with the film being like, this is the film that Andy saw as a kid. It's like, okay. Like, I don't know. I guess to me, that makes sense to me. Like, I don't know.
Really even need to overcomplicate things. This is just like, this is the movie that Andy saw as a kid, and we're watching that movie.
Because, like, to me, there are other problems with the movie that are worth talking about more than the whole premise. And yeah, I do agree a little with you that it's maybe a little too modern day in terms of like its writing and the jokes, but I'm not too bothered by that. It's more the fact that like there's a really strong emotional core to Lightyear with the whole like don't let mistakes drive the way you live. Buzz at the beginning of the film messes up and causes the big onion ship to crash on this earth because
the turnip.
Oh yeah, the turnip. It looks like an onion to me. So he feels like, okay, let's try this hyperdrive testing, and I'm going to make sure to do it enough times so we can get out of here because it's my mistake. I'm going to like make it work and fix it and what have you. And that opening montage of him going through it so many times, even though every other time he is going further and further into the future while everyone else ages faster than him. First of all, I like that aspect of the story. I am kind of glad that they talked about that because a lot of sci-fi films and shows tend to kind of forget that science is really complex and space travel is really complex.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this anime back in the day called Lily Cat. It's pretty much like an anime version of Alien and John Carpenter's The Thing mixed into one. Not as good, but it's that in tone and execution. There's a scene where the characters talk about like saying like, I'm much older than all of you. And one of the characters goes, really? You look like the same age as me. And the guy goes, I am 200 years old because I was in cryo sleep for a lot of travel. And then he goes like, and what about her? She's like 150 in Earth years. And I like that Lightyear does that where every time they try the hyperspace thing, like everyone ages 4 years every time he does a test.
4 minutes on the trip is 4 years.
That montage, while, you know, Pixar has done emotional montages before with, you know, the king still probably being up. I like how they handled it. It has a lot of small little touches that make that creeping Pixar, we're going to punch you in the feels moment happen. I do like the action in this movie. It's interesting to talk about an action movie when it comes to Pixar because they really just have maybe just The Incredibles and Onward. And I mean, the Cars film, well, Cars 2 specifically has action, and I guess you could be like really vague with in terms of like how you describe action within a Pixar film. But it was interesting to see Pixar do a sci-fi pulpy action adventure kind of thing with this story and how Like they introduce Zurg and the robots and this ragtag group of individuals who must save the day and are like the underdogs of it all. I think this is where maybe my first criticism pops up. I like Chris Evans as Buzz Lightyear. I think he does a great job. I think for this take on the character, you needed someone like Chris Evans who can put a lot of charm into this, like obviously experienced, but very
aloof
kind of character. Like, of course, they show this part in the trailer where he's doing the narration thing, and then Alicia Hawthorne kind of calls him out on it. It's like, you're narrating again. And he's like, yeah, I'm keeping archive of my actions and such. And she's like, nobody reads those, right? It's like, yes, I do. Narrating helps me focus.
My favorite part is when he's like giving the speech to the rookie and Alicia's like playing music in the background.
Yeah, that part's great. There are a lot of good jokes in this movie,
and they're not all Toy Story callbacks, but what I like about those is they're woven in like so organically that,
I mean, you notice them, but it doesn't feel as like
distracting.
Yeah, like, no offense, I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife recently and I was just like not having a good time watching that movie, and just how it felt more sad that it was so reliant on that first film for its callbacks and its third act. And here I was like, oh yeah, there's that line. That's cute. That's fun. I also like Socks, who's voiced by Peter Son. I think that's a delightful character. Like, Socks is the scene stealer throughout the entire film.
I think he might actually be my favorite.
I think he's everyone's favorite character. I love that he knocks someone out and then Buzz is like, did you just trank someone? You got 5 minutes. Like, you could tell like someone at Pixar wanted, like, okay, he's a toy robot cat, so he's got very good movements, but he's not just like moving like a human does. He still moves around like a robot, like a Furby, or like those like robot puppies that you can get at like those kind of weird niche stores that you see at like a mall and such. I like that they took that approach with Socks. They didn't try to like make him like a super fluid robot and such. No, he's very clunky and robotic.
He moves like a toy.
And I like Izzy Hawthorne, who's voiced by Keke Palmer, who a lot of people would know from her work on stuff like the Ice Age film where she voices Peaches, and her appearances here and there from the Winx Club franchise, or her more recent appearance in The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder as Maya Leibowitz Jenkins. I think where the film falls flat is with everyone else. And we'll get to Zurg in a moment. I think this mostly came up for me with Mo Morrison and Darby Steele. They're good. I like Dale Souls and Taika Waititi as Mo and Darby, but their characters aren't the most interesting to me, or like not the most complex. And Izzy isn't the most complex character either, but they give her a lot more to do because of her connections to Alicia. But Darby is just kind of like the hard-edged prisoner character, and Mo is just kind of like the cowardly hero. Like, what did you think about these side characters of this new team that Buzz has to work with?
I like them. They're not anything spectacular. They do feel like characters who are really just there to like fill out the ensemble. Again, I'm not trying to compare this to previous Toy Story media, but one thing I really love about Buzz Lightyear Star Command is the fact that Buzz has like a really fun supporting cast surrounding him. I respect the attempt to create like a similar sort of team dynamic, but I also just wish that these characters had a little bit more meat on the bones.
Yeah, I mean, like, they have their funny moments. Like, I like Darby's like last line in the movie where she's like, I got out on good behavior, not good attitude. And Mo is more kind of like the typical Taika character. He's kind of bumbly, kind of awkward. The stuff with the pen is hilarious.
The payoff to the pen makes that all worth it.
But then there's like other characters like Airman Diaz, who's voiced by Efren Ramirez. He's just kind of there to also fill out everything. Mary McDonald Lewis as Ivan, the autopilot, is charming, but just kind of a typical autopilot robot AI thing.
I'm a touch disappointed that Bill Hader only shows up as the rookie feathering Hamston.
That was him?
Yep. I think Bill Hader is like kind of slowly becoming the new John Ratzenberger.
I'm fine with that. And then there's Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Commander Burnside. And he's also just kind of like the typical like we're going to do things my way character who gets in the way of Buzz wanting to continue the hyperdrive thing, but he's just like, nope, we're not doing it. We're going to stay here and we're going to put up a laser shield, which is very funny. I loved the mid-credit sequence of him just sitting there and one of those bug monsters zaps against it. He's like, ha, laser shield. Well, and that's because Isaiah Whitlock is just a good actor. And also, this is his second Pixar film. He was River Scott in Cars 3. But even though I say like these side characters aren't as interesting, and I also liked Uzo Aduba as Alicia Hawthorne, I wish he was in the movie a little more. I just love Uzo and I love Alicia as a character, so I wanted to see more. Like, I wish Pixar would maybe get out of this funk of having to only do movies at 100 minutes. Yeah. I would have liked to have them maybe do like 2 hours. Like, see where that goes. Have time to flesh things out, expand, take a breather. Because the other problem with this film is its pacing. It feels like it's brushing a lot of interesting aspects to the plot aside just to get to the next story piece.
I don't disagree with that. I think I accepted the pacing a little bit more the second time I watched it, where the events seemed to flow a bit more. The second time I watched this, the movie flowed a lot better. But the first time, yeah, I will admit, certain scenes kind of fly right by.
Because I think a lot of this would have helped the twist. And spoilers from here on out. Let's talk about Zurg for a quick moment. Now, on one hand, I love Zurg's design. Very imposing, very intimidating. I know some people were like, well, why doesn't he have his Toy Story look? And it's like, again, a lot of times when the animated series happens, they redesign half of these characters.
Yep.
To like differentiate it from the movie, which is, weird, but I get it. But then I kind of am on like the mixed side of the twist, where it turns out that Zurg is being piloted by an alternate history future Buzz Lightyear. I'm so mixed on those kind of twists because I'm not usually one of those people who gets like super critical about time travel plot twists, because trying to make that make sense is hard. So it's just like, I wasn't really on board with it, even though I get it, because this older alternate universe Buzz Lightyear is what would have happened if Buzz kept going.
The twist works better thematically than practically.
He's not a very interesting villain otherwise. And I wish Zurg was just
Zurg.
It's interesting because there's the complexity and emotional core of a Pixar film kind of bumping heads with this trying to be like a sci-fi 90s romp. The villain is very much like something that an old school sci-fi film would have been like, oh my gosh, what a twist. Like, I didn't see that coming.
From a 2022 perspective, this is the kind of twist that we would see just so many times.
And I like James Brolin. I'm not saying like what he contributed was not good. I wish that they would have stuck with just the campier side of things and just made Zurg a killer robot and not just an alternate universe Lightyear piloting the Zurg robots. Thematically, it makes sense. Execution-wise, it's where it falters. And to me, these are the problems that are worth discussing about this film. The pacing problems, the twist, the side characters. The whole world shouldn't be focusing on the freaking kiss as the reason why this film may be underperforming.
Like, oh my God.
Such a non-controversy. Now, listen, I'm not defending Disney here or Pixar here. Disney still has a long way to go with having actual proper representation that's not just sidelined or just a quick mention. This one is a little more substantial than last. Like Onward's like, oh, the one line that I can say that can easily be cut out. It's a lot more substantial. You do see Alicia and her wife. Granted, her wife gets no lines.
Baby steps.
Maybe stop with the baby steps and move on to like big kid steps. More confident steps. And it's weird because it's like you watch like the Owl House and there's like, whoa, they're doing really good there. But then with the movies, it's like, huh.
I'm really
The
curious to see
wavelength-
how
yeah.
Strange Worlds handles this.
Exactly, because it's like
that character is like part of the ensemble. So, this is like their chance to prove like the masses wrong.
yeah, to say like, hey, we are ready to move forward with doing this. And they made like a big proud statement of we're not going to care that. And it's also like, man, really? This is what you can get the movie banned these days? It's like we've seen kissing in movies since forever.
If parents and other like lobbyists have a problem with same-sex relationships in media, then logically they should have problems with any sort of like romance in children's media. These homophobic groups always like cushion their bigotry. They always use children as like a meat shield for their bigotry. And that's something I cannot agree with.
Getting so sick and tiring of how it's portrayed. And yet they'll stay quiet about every other thing. The couple, like Alicia and her wife, are there for pretty much like 5 or 6 minutes of the entire 100-minute runtime. The people reacting negatively to the kiss look stupid for getting mad at 6 minutes of the film. But it's also like, Disney, if you're going to make a big deal about this, you got to start making these parts of your films meatier. And
what Disney almost kind of refuses to do in anything except for shows on television is they're kind of afraid to just bust down the door. Instead, they're like lightly tapping at the door.
If you're going to like take a stand at like, okay, we don't care that we're getting banned from other countries. Okay, then start expanding on it then. It shouldn't be complicated, but it's so like nauseating to have to talk about this again with like Disney, you need to do better. Everyone else in the US and in the world, do better. It overtakes what is otherwise a really solid Pixar movie. Not one of their best. I think it was a big mistake to not put Turning Red in wide release.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that like Lightyear deserved it, but because I'm glad I saw Lightyear on a big screen. Its animation is gorgeous, the designs are charming, and the visuals are just amazing. Just wow. Like Pixar spends money, but you can absolutely see it on screen.
Yeah, the budget for this is $200 million, and $200 million is on screen.
Yeah, right. I also think it's just funny that it's like $200 million, and usually like when studios are like very like, we're going to be really like look over your shoulder in terms of how this is going to unfold, so we know we're going to get our money back from all this. They were still able to put in like probably the funniest joke in the movie, the whole sandwich gag. It's like they said like nobody stopped them from putting in this weird little sandwich part where like our friend said like it seems really specific that like they put that part in where it's just like, okay, so the meat surrounds the bread, but like why? Then they're just like, so wait, so you had 2 pieces of bread with meat in the middle? Darby goes, well, that's just too much
bread.
And it's just like, at first it's like, oh, this is kind of a really funny and really silly sci-fi gag. And then I've had these conversations all the time when I'm at different sandwich joints. And I'm like, this is too much bread. A lot of the gags for this film are fun. And overall, it's a really fun movie. I think if you feel up to it and want to see a movie like this in the theater, do so. But it's hard not to feel a little disappointed with this. Like, as usual, I'm for Pixar trying out different kinds of stories, whether they're big in scale or small or more personal. But it's tough to not think this could have been better in some ways. And maybe it's just because it's a first-time director, or like his first time directing a feature, or maybe the fact that this was the last thing that John Lasseter greenlit before he got the boot from Pixar.
Oh yeah.
Like part of that makes me think like maybe they're having to kind of dig their heels into the ground to explain the premise of this film, because they were kind of like, why are we doing this, Lasseter?
Lasseter was out by 2017, correct?
Yeah, but this still took like years to make. So, and it got like a thank you Lasseter in the credits.
Oh, yeah. And
So
Lasseter is even in the documentary, which I'm going to use my recommendation segment to talk about the documentary that came out on Disney Plus called Beyond Infinity. It goes into not just the making of Lightyear, but it goes into like Buzz Lightyear's entire inception.
right. No, we'll get to that in just a sec. Actually, let's get to that right now. In general, Lightyear, really solid sci-fi film, not the strongest Pixar film, but if this is what Angus can come up with for a directorial debut, I would love to see him do something when he gets like an original idea in his hands. I would watch it, but I don't blame anyone for not wanting to watch it. Or like at least right now, especially with a few outside of entertainment aspects of making going to the theaters kind of tricky and not just a pandemic and such.
Yeah.
But if you feel like it, definitely go see it. Make up your own opinions and thoughts. I'd be curious to see what y'all think about it.
I would consider Lightyear in the, I'd say, upper middle tier of Pixar. It's not in like the top 10 or anything, but it's not even in the bottom either. This is just a really entertaining sci-fi action adventure with great comic relief, gorgeous animation, a great score by Michael Giacchino, and make sure you stay for the credits because there are 3 stingers. There's a mid-credit scene and then 2 post-credit scenes. The third one is after the Pixar logo.
Mike, go on about your recommendation about Beyond Infinity.
Beyond Infinity, Buzz and the Journey to Lightyear is a documentary about like 35 minutes that was released on Disney Plus on June 10th. They don't just talk about the production of Lightyear. They go all the way back to the Pixar short Tin Toy, or whatever like the Christmas special was going to be, and how that turned into the first Toy Story movie. They show early concept art, all the different names that Buzz Lightyear used to have. I think one of them was like Lunar Larry. If you like pulling back the curtain on all these Pixar films, this is like one of the many reasons to have a Disney Plus subscription, is they have like these behind the scenes documentaries for pretty much everything now. Like they'll do stuff like this. All of the Marvel and Star Wars shows have similar documentaries. There was even another behind the scenes documentary for like animation. I talked about this before. It was one of the episodes where Eric Goldberg was drawing the genie.
Right.
Definitely check out this documentary if you want to learn a little bit more about how Buzz Lightyear came to be.
Agreed. For me, it was tough. I was kind of thinking, what do I recommend? I am going to recommend a show that I don't know what's going to happen to it. It's kind of stuck on Verve right now. And this is all while Crunchyroll is kind of becoming the mainstay for anime. And I don't know what they're going to do with Verve. So we'll have to see how that goes. I'm going to recommend Harmon Quest. It's a show that's by Dan Harmon. And it came out a bit before the animated adaptation of Vox Machina and, the Critical Role D&D series. It's a more comedic take on a fantasy adventure show where Dan Harmon, 2 other mainstay actors play like the main gang, and then they have like a guest actor or like 1 or 2 of them, depending on the episode. Like the first episode has like Paul F. Tompkins, and then another episode will have like Nathan Fillion, or like another one will have like Patton Oswalt and such. And it's mostly done in a very improv kind of way, as like they have a baseline of a story, but they don't have like a script to work off of. It's basically them being recorded playing Dungeons and Dragons in front of a live audience, and then it's intercut between animated sequences.
Sounds like a fun premise. I've always been kind of curious to check it out, but by the time I was even really aware of it, they were already in season 3.
Yeah, and right now who knows what's going to actually happen to the show now, because of what the fate of Verve is kind of up in the air right now. But I would like to see a 4th season. They kind of leave everything off every season with like a cliffhanger of sorts, because they go like, wait until next season, like with a question mark on Harmon Quest. And It's a lot of fun. It can drag at times a little, which is, improv can drag a little, especially depending on like if the guest that they have is either good at improv or knows how to play Dungeons and Dragons. The ones who know how to play Dungeons and Dragons seem to know a little more about it, handle the premise more. But it's overall like a really solid and fun series. And I've been rewatching it because, I'm getting super impatient for Vox Machina season 2, which will probably premiere next year and what have you. So
probably.
Now, next time, we're going to be talking about Spriggan and Beavis and Butthead, the new movie coming out for Paramount Plus.
Until then, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Cam's Eye View. I run my own website called camseyeview.biz, where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon called patreon.com/camseyeview. If you see my work, like it, and want to send some support my way, that's one way you can do it.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, and the Banana Meter. Listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, etc., wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys later. Peace out.